views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jameson Rabbit, and this week I am once again joined, you know him as the host of the Sun Prairie News program. It is the great Dan Presser. Welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you for calling me the great, but it's good to be back, as
Take
always.
it where you can get it,
right,
man.
I'll take whatever you want to give. That's great.
So we're here to talk about a bunch of movies. Well, we got 3 movies to chat about.
Yeah.
One of these movies, you joined me early in the year, looking forward at the year of 2022. One of these movies made your list back then.
Yeah, I did. You know, Elvis has always been a huge part of my life. I've always been a big Elvis fan. Kind of was before my time, but
Sure.
my mom and sisters were big Elvis fans, so it kind of just flowed naturally into me. So I really was waiting for that movie.
Well, we're going to be talking about it. But first, I'm going to get started with what we have on the marquee, and I have got a little bit of a thriller for you. It's a movie called The Black Phone from director Scott Derrickson. This is a Blumhouse production. It is based on a story written by Joe Hill, who is the son of Stephen King. And it stars a young man, Finney, played by Mason Thames. Finney is a 13-year-old kid in the 1970s who is abducted by a sadistic masked man called the Grabber, who keeps him in a soundproof basement. In that soundproof basement, when a disconnected phone on the wall starts to ring, Finney realizes that he can hear the voices of previous child victims, and they are set on making sure that the Grabber does not get his way this time. And each previous child that was in that basement kind of has an angle on the situation of how to deal with the Grabber. It's set in the 1970s. I felt like it does a good job of setting up this small town. He's got a sister, Gwen, played by Madeline McGraw, who has visions. She can see things that have happened, will happen, or soon to happen. Apparently her mother also had this situation, which leads her dad, who is a raging alcoholic, to really take it out on her. And you also have Finney is kind of the outsider in the school. He's the one who gets bullied, he gets picked on. So both of these kids are bullied in school, at home. Kind
of a typical device in thrillers and scary movies sometimes. Yeah,
the drunk, angry,
dad,
divorced dad.
A lot of psychodrama.
Your mom did the same thing you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, tough to watch. I thought that both of the child actors were really solid. I really liked both Finney and Gwen.
I agree. I loved Finney, really. I liked the way he played the role. I liked, I bought in right away to, him being bullied.
Yeah.
I didn't really like the bullying kind of too much. It's just so, it wasn't really, I guess it's necessary, but the way they did it, kind of the unpolitically correct.
Sure.
I realized it was the 70s, and I lived through that time of my life too, and I know that's how people talked. So it was realistic, I suppose, but maybe not as necessary as it would be in today's time.
Absolutely.
I sometimes, when I watch these movies like this, and this is an aside, the late 70s and stuff, I get sucked into that period because I grew up in that period. So you're just like, oh, that's what it looked like.
Sure.
So, but I did, and any movie that has a phone in it is scary. It's like
phone rings.
Phone rings. Sorry, wrong number. And then
you're
it's
not
not
wrong.
hooked up to
It
anything.
is, especially when it's just so jarring. It breaks the silence with that ring.
Yes,
that is very true. Now, what's interesting to me is that the abduction. It's not a surprise.
No.
You know right away there's going to be the abduction.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of anticipation leading up to that. But I thought it was still fairly effective. Ethan Hawke, I thought, was really effective as the Grabber in a role that's. I mean, his face is covered by a mask for almost the entirety of the movie.
A series of interesting masks, really.
Yes,
There were some pretty interesting masks.
He brings a physicality to it, and just trying to figure out his weird psyche. I was really intrigued by him.
He was interesting because he's your kind of your typical boogeyman. It's that boogeyman character,
I mean,
evil incarnate.
A lot of towns always had that story of that guy.
Somebody
in that van,
getting out of a van.
That house is where this happened.
Right, and I thought he played that evil well. And there was some at times, because he was also a clown type character who was liked the kids and things like that. that's kind of creepy in itself, you know, it kind of brings that into it. And at times he was like a disturbed little boy, you know, he'd pull that little boy out of his inner being. And so I thought that played pretty well too.
Yeah, I mean, you see the interplay between he and another character, Max.
Right.
That is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
One of the things for me for this movie though is I felt like it never truly, I was really anticipating this movie, it never really truly lived up to being a true thriller in my book.
Yeah.
There were really interesting moments of scares.
Yep.
But I kind of felt like I wish there would have been more fleshing out of some things, fleshing out about the grabber's motivations. Also, supernatural is a thing in this world.
Oh boy.
And it's not really talked about, but there's supernatural things happening all over the place, as a great Stephen King or son of Stephen King novel would.
They kind of leaned on, maybe this is just me, but I felt like they leaned on the supernatural a little too much.
It was the thing that explained everything, basically.
And it was a way out in many cases.
You're absolutely right.
And I thought also that I was scared. You know, I scare easily. I'm not a big scary movie kind of person or a thriller. I like thrillers, but I was scared at a number of times. But I was kind of scared at times when I don't think I was supposed to be scared. Kind of during the father beating.
Yes.
That was rough. That was awful. That was awful for, I think, people to watch, and that scared me.
And that little girl was great in that performance.
Oh, she was fantastic. You know,
holy cow! It broke my heart.
You just were like, ugh.
Yeah, I expected, I think, maybe a more sinister movie than this was.
Yeah.
And part of it is, probably no pun intended, was that Ethan Hawke and the director Scott Derrickson made a really terrifying Blumhouse horror movie called Sinister a few years ago. So I was expecting that DNA to follow this.
Okay.
But I do. There's a lot I enjoy here. I love movies that, first off, it's set in the 1970s, had some great needle drops for music. Reminded me almost like Dazed and Confused.
Oh yeah, yep.
We're like, ooh, I like that jam.
Yep.
You know?
I'm with you. I like the track.
I like that. I love a movie about kids that are mostly left unsupervised and they go out and do their own thing.
Reminds me of your own childhood.
Me, explore, like all these things.
Yeah.
Kids having to fight evil, and really, when you think about it, it's a band of kids fighting evil. You only really see Finney, but he's joined by a band of kids that are helping him fight evil.
The previous victims,
I
right?
kind of like that dynamic. It's what makes Stranger Things so much fun.
There is a little of that feel in it at times. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And all in all, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised at times. I was scared at times. The story kept me interested, and Ethan Hawke's performance pulled me in, and the kids were great, I thought. So.
All right, what does all that lead up to for a score from you then?
So I actually gave it a 3 because I think it's worth going to see. I think it's, if you like to be thrilled, you like to be scared, it might not be, it's not Psycho, but it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's effective. It's an effective movie. I was hoping for a little more, but maybe this works just fine. I end up giving it a 3.5. I really like Ethan Hawke a lot.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
I think he's really interesting to watch, and the kid who played Finney was wonderful. So we both say it's worth checking out if you have the time. Speaking of other movies on the marquee, sir, what do you have for us?
So we were talking at the beginning of the show about Elvis. That is the new Bad Luhrmann biopic about the late king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. And over the years, Presley's life has been turned into a movie a number of times, and never quite like this, though, I think, because the telling of this Elvis story is seen through the eyes of his often demonized manager, Tom Parker, or as most know him, Colonel Tom Parker. Parker is played by, he's played as a kind of slimy carnival huckster, and he's played by Tom Hanks. And the film begins with the Colonel in very poor health in a hospital somewhere and ruminating about his relationship with the king, and really kind of revisionist history type of a feel to it. The Colonel launches into a monologue denying any responsibility for what led to Elvis's death in 1977. And then we launch into Elvis's life. And you can see right there the young Elvis on stage, his first big moment in front of a big crowd. And it goes from there. And it's really just a carnival of, it's like a carnival of Elvis montages and scenes. And the story goes through, if you know Elvis at all, you follow his life from that barnstorming hillbilly cat into the army, where we are first introduced to Priscilla. And of course, Elvis is played by Austin Butler. And excellently played by Austin Butler, in my opinion. And as an Elvis fan, I'm always looking for kind of like, does he do the moves? Does he feel like Elvis? And he really did feel like Elvis. But we were introduced to Priscilla while he's in the Army, and conveniently we're not told that she was 14 years old when Elvis started dating her. There's a lot of revisionist history in this movie.
Lots.
In fact, there's a lot of non-history in this movie. So don't go to it thinking you're going to be seeing an Elvis documentary. But you are going to see Elvis performances. You are going to see some pieces of Elvis's life, like here you can see where he was rushed off the stage in a concert down south after rudely showing his pelvis and kind of stirring up the ladies in the crowd. And then we go from there to really what takes up a huge part of the movie. They kind of gloss over the whole Elvis in movies period with
basically skip that completely.
They just did a little, which was kind of a cool little montage as they walked through the train. That was kind of a neat way of getting through all of those pretty much lousy movies to the '68 comeback tour, and they spent a lot of time on that. And that's the black Elvis leather. I mean the black leather Elvis there, where he's on stage, and yet it's kind of like the rebirth of Elvis after a pretty crappy Hollywood career. And I don't know. That part's very interesting because you kind of see Elvis wanted to be an artist, but there was this, Tom Hanks is, as the Colonel, is narrating this whole thing, and he's basically telling the story through his eyes, and his eyes and Elvis's eyes. Elvis was an artist in his mind, while to the Colonel, Elvis was a performer, and
he felt like he owned Elvis.
He felt like
he created him. He had
created
ownership.
Him. It was the showman and the snowman.
He was almost jealous of what he created at points.
Yeah, and at points, and he kind of wanted to keep Elvis to himself, and he wanted to keep Elvis making money. He was a money machine.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that kind of, in the end, was his demise.
Drove him into the ground.
But all in all, it was a fun movie to watch. What'd you think?
I think Baz Luhrmann's decision to focus the story on the manager as opposed to the iconic character was a decision I didn't love.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks is an actor who I adore. His performance was outrageous. I mean, every time Tom Hanks tries an accent out, I feel like it fails miserably. The Terminal, Lady Killers, this one was no different. The accent was kind of distractingly out there. And I felt like every time I was getting into the groove with the Elvis story and I was starting to enjoy it, it would veer off and pull focus back to Colonel Tom Parker and his outrageousness. And I felt like they were skipping so much of Elvis's career that I wanted. I mean, he basically meets Priscilla, goes to the Army, comes back, they're having marriage problems.
Right.
It's over.
You don't really see
the movie career is basically skipped over. Everything with the Memphis Mafia, never mentioned.
They're just characters kind of in the background.
And there's a lot of Graceland. Like, that's a big thing. That's like, oh, I guess that's Graceland. I guess they're in it right now. I don't know. So there's so much of that. And it's weird because this is a fairly long movie. It's like 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Yeah, it's long.
I hear there's a 4-hour cut that Luhrmann wants to put out.
Wow.
Which part of me thinks, okay, I'd love to see it because there's a lot of this in here that I feel like got skipped over. But part of me says, I felt like I watched a 4-hour movie already.
There were times in the movie where you're like,
I felt like this movie somehow both dragged and was at like a breakneck pace. Like, if I felt the runtime, but I also felt like we're like hurtling through his career, and then we slam the brakes on at the '68 special. And then, and I wanted more Fat Elvis at the end too.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a lot of that.
The demise of Elvis you wanted to see.
That. I don't know. I've watched so many music biopics, and so many of them. I'm searching for good ones. And it's real hit and miss.
It's hard, and as an Elvis fan, I appreciated Austin Butler's performance as Elvis, and I think what you're struck with when you watch a movie like this is the physicality of Elvis. Like when you see him in 1972 in the Vegas show, his comeback show in Vegas, and the energy a guy like him had to put into a show every night like that. That's like playing a football game every night of the week. So you can
He's
just a gel mess of sweat, and that was when he was at the height of his physicality and everything like that. And it would have been nice to see more of how that decline happened. You just know because he was stuck. He's caught in a trap. And that's kind of what happened to him. And I'm with you. I would have liked to. I want to see a movie about Elvis that focuses on Elvis from 1956 to when John Lennon said Elvis died when he went into the Army. I want to see that period because to me that is the quintessential making of a cultural icon right
That's
there.
what created a music. A genre and this icon, and then everything that followed after that was just building on the legend, but that was the creation. And I felt like we were just kind of scattershot in that.
It's hard to squeeze all that.
And it's weird to make it the Colonel Tom Parker movie, featuring Elvis. And I thought Austin Butler, I was kind of 50-50 on him. I thought that his physicality in the performances was amazing. The voice felt like a put on to me. When he was talking,
understand that. Yep.
It felt affected to me, and he doesn't really have a resemblance to Elvis.
No.
And so I kept at moments when he was outside of performances and when he's just having interactions with Tom Parker or whatever, I kept having to remind myself, this is Elvis.
I think they chose Austin Butler for this because he most looked like Elvis in the black leather from the side.
He really did.
He really nailed that, and he nailed the 72 Vegas Elvis.
Those performances were great. And even, like you said, the performance in Memphis when he gets arrested, like that, he has the moves. He has the physicality. But part of it just kept pulling me out. I don't know. The voice just felt like it was an affect.
And I'm disappointed, too, in the Tom Hanks performance in this. I love Tom Hanks. I mean, who doesn't love Tom Hanks?
He's one of our greatest actors ever, but this was an odd decision. And I feel like part of it is Baz Luhrmann, who loves getting wild performances out of people. I felt like he was pushing this.
I read something that said Luhrmann actually kind of wanted Tom Hanks to do a strange accent to make him more kind of, otherworldly, not of this world, and it was.
It
did. It felt like a comic book character.
It felt like he was the antagonist to Captain Marvel Jr. as Elvis saw himself as being. And it was weird. And what was also weird to me is he's made out to be like a total villain in this movie, unredeeming villain. He did do great things for Elvis's career. That's kind of glossed over. And he's also very much an unreliable narrator. He's the one telling this story here. And so you have to take all the facts as they are with a real grain of salt.
Well, the other character in this movie who kind of, Vernon Presley, Elvis's dad, really ends up being kind of a minor villain too. He's just a patsy in this movie who just gets, taken advantage of and doesn't stand up for Elvis a lot. And I'm not quite sure if that's all true or not.
I mean, there's that key moment when he's collapsed in the hall and they turned to Vernon and said, it's your choice. Should we do the right thing and allow him to rehab or put him out there and keep him earning?
And they stick a shot in him and
do what you got to do, Doc.
Get the horse back out on the track and make him run hard. So, that was disappointing. But, all in all, I enjoyed the movie. And I went with my wife and my daughter who are, borderline Elvis fans, and they enjoyed the movie as well. And the movie did pretty well, I guess. In some ways, I was disappointed to know that Priscilla Presley and Lisa Marie Presley and the Presley kind of estate loved this movie because right away you're not getting the full truth, and we probably never will get the full truth until, many years after everybody's gone. But it's I think it was really a reboot for the Elvis Presley enterprises so that they could kind of keep people going down to Graceland.
I mean, Elvis he's still learning.
Well, and his music,
45 years later, he's still
his
iconic.
Music is great.
There's no doubt.
And if you ever want to hear I don't want to keep going on and on. I could go on all day about this, but he toured with Hank Snow early in his career, and Hank Snow sings "Pardon Me If I'm Sentimental." Now and then there's a fool such as I, and if you ever want to hear what Elvis really had, listen to Elvis's version of that song and then listen to Hank Snow's version of that song, and you can see why people were excited about Elvis at that time. So
it felt to me like Baz Luhrmann watched Amadeus and was informed about, let's have the villain tell the story. Only I felt like that was done much better.
Oh, absolutely.
As far as that goes.
And there's a lot of This Is Elvis feel in that too. If you ever watch that Elvis documentary, it kind of shows the demise. There's kind of those side-by-side shots, those kind of 70s shots. He had that feel in there as well.
All right, what did you end up giving Elvis?
So, I probably gave it a much higher score than I gave it a 4 just because I think if you're an Elvis fan, you should go see this movie. And if you like music, go see this movie because there's actually a pretty good soundtrack in this movie as well. There's some great rap music. There's some good mix-ups.
As Baz Luhrmann always does.
Yeah, he did a nice job with that.
He melds eras of music into his movies.
But see it if you're an Elvis fan.
Yeah, I really wanted to enjoy this more than I did. I felt the runtime though. I ended up giving it 2.5. It didn't impress me, it didn't disappoint me.
Yeah.
It felt like a lot of the biopics that I watch. We went and saw Respect together last year, and I felt kind of similar to that. Like, there's so much meat on the bone that you left and just kind of mismanaged. And one of the things I always want is, in the Respect movie, when they're banging on the piano and they finally figure out how to play Respect.
Yeah.
I like those moments where oh, here we go.
Yeah.
We didn't get any of that.
Oh, they had that one moment when he was preparing for the 72 tour and he's directing the beginning of the show.
Oh, that is true.
There was that in there. But yeah.
All right, so what we have on our streaming spotlight this week, sir, is we turn to Netflix for a movie called The Man from Toronto. This is directed by Patrick Hughes. He is responsible for Expendables 3 and The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. This movie stars Kevin Hart. There's a man named Teddy. Teddy is a man who just can't catch a break. Constantly coming up with schemes, trying to create businesses. Most of them work out plans that are horribly come awry. He has trouble following through on things. He doesn't have an eye for detail. He always allows one detail to slip past him and kind of sabotage what happens to him. He wants to surprise his lovely wife for her birthday, Lori, played by Jasmine Matthews. He rents them a cabin to retreat to. Unfortunately, one of those details was that he never replaced the toner in the printer. And you'll hear about it all movie long. This leads to a printout of the address being very blurry when they go up to this cabin. So this leads to some real issues when, after dropping his lovely wife off at a spa while he goes to prepare the cabin, he unwittingly walks into the wrong cabin. This cabin is inhabited by 3 men who are expecting the titular Man from Toronto to be walking in. The Man from Toronto is actually character played by Woody Harrelson, who is a hitman, a world-renowned, ill-tempered hitman who has a skill at getting information out of people. Of course, there's misunderstanding. They think Kevin Hart is this world-renowned hitman. The cabin is busted by the feds, and what follows is a big old mess of these two going out on a mission. The real and fake Toronto must team up to bring down a Venezuelan bad guy. The real Toronto is a hitman who loves 19th century poetry.
Right, of course.
He loves
brilliant.
his Dodge Charger, and he loves inflicting pain on people. And these two are put through some various situations, facing off with another hitman from Miami.
Where that just kind of came out of nowhere, too,
really
suddenly.
And all while Woody Harrelson is kind of doing his usual stuff. It reminded me of his character, who also had a city named Tallahassee in the Zombieland movies.
Very
he loves
true.
going by guys with city names.
It's a great character, though, for him. I thought
he fits it perfectly.
He
Let me put on my black jacket.
Yep.
Let me drive a souped-up car and call me by a city name.
I mean, this movie had a lot of the things that I like in a movie. It had a great car, the 1969 Dodge Charger. Woody Harrelson is kind of this, the smart, mysterious hitman guy, and Kevin Hart. It's your buddy film. It's the buddy film.
It is. It feels like every movie Kevin Hart's been doing.
Oh,
lately.
absolutely.
And every character where
it's like a Jerry Lewis movie.
He's like the bumbling guy who just screams through a movie.
Yep.
In a lot of movies lately.
Yeah, there are some funny moments in this movie, though. I'll say, and he's able to make those because you expect it. You expect those moments from Kevin Hart. The screaming, bungling guy, the guy who's hanging from chandeliers and jumping from chandelier to chandelier. Those work because you kind of expect Kevin Hart to be able to pull those off. Sure. I think, and actually kind of believed the relationship between him and Woody.
Yeah.
They made that work. Sometimes you're like, this would never happen.
Also interesting, I didn't mention, is it's actually got a cast of characters that. Yeah. Ellen Barkin is the handler in charge of these guys.
Which I didn't know until the end. I was like, who is that person?
Yeah, it's a familiar voice.
Yeah.
Kaylee Cuoco.
Where did she come from?
Shows up in here to just play the friend of his wife.
She's a lot younger than Woody Harrelson, though.
Very much so. Yeah.
So, but she plays it well. I mean, very much. I was like, was that the woman from The Flight Attendant?
It is.
And it was.
The flight attendant herself.
I thought, there was a lot. I didn't quite understand the whole the whole what were they trying to take down at the end there. I was like, where?
It doesn't matter.
It didn't matter. You're right. It didn't matter. But I watched it with my wife, and she likes to know that, and I'm like, I'm not exactly
That'll drive you
sure.
nuts then.
Right.
I don't think the scriptwriters really cared
No,
so
I don't
much.
think they cared either. But we laughed. We laughed out loud a couple of times, so that was good.
It is good.
But there was a lot of unbelievable things, like the flying out of an airplane and holding on to a rope to make sure you don't fly away. Yeah.
I've seen that happen in other movies.
I've seen that happen in plenty of movies.
I've seen The Rock pull a helicopter out of the sky with a chain. I mean, I've seen some things happen. Yeah, I had a hard time with this movie, Dan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't feel like it should have been 2 hours long. I mean, this movie was like $1.57, and I was having a hard time with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Part of me feels like Kevin Hart doing the same old has run its course for me.
Okay. Yep.
Kind of just want something other than the guy who's just screaming through a movie.
Yeah. Well, and for me, a lot of, and this is probably not fair, but when I watch a movie at home on Netflix, I have fewer expectations than I do when I go to a movie theater.
That's true.
And that's probably not fair. I kind of just expect it to be, it's okay. I didn't waste 2 hours, but I didn't, love 2 hours.
It's funny you say that because the last note in my notes says, they wasted a lot of talent and I wasted my time.
Well, there you go.
Because I thought Ellen Barkin, Kaylee Cuoco, all these people, all right, here we go, this big cast.
Woody Harrelson was good.
Woody's always great.
Yeah.
I will stand up for Woody at all times,
Yeah.
but yeah. All right, let's hit the scores. What did you give The Man from Toronto?
So, I mean, I didn't love it. I was entertained. I gave it a 2.5. So maybe it could have been a little bit lower from listening to you, but
No, that's your
was
score.
fine. Yep. What about you?
I was much lower. I did not care for the movie. I gave it 1 star.
Yeah.
I was just kind of checking my watch. I don't even wear a watch, but I was looking for it.
I could see it. You're pulling your phone out of your pocket
Yeah, well,
constantly.
there's a lot of the phone out of the pocket.
When is it over?
Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed by it. So.
Yeah.
Let's take a look ahead, sir, at what is coming out the weekend of July 8th. We have a few movies. First one is a big one. The new Marvel movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, will be coming out. I'm so excited for this movie.
Yeah. There's been a ton of movie hype about it. So
every time I go to the theater, I see something with it. Over on Netflix, there's a film called Incantation, which is a Chinese horror film right up your alley.
Yeah.
Including a cursed video and a father trying to enlist others to help him lift the curse from his daughter. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And then lastly, over on Netflix as well, we have The Sea Beast, which is an animated film about a young girl who stows away on the ship of a monster hunter and begins an epic adventure with him. It is from Netflix Animation in coordination with Sony Animation.
Huh.
It looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, that does
trailer.
sound interesting to me.
Yeah.
Do you like the animated ones?
I do.
Typically,
I'm a big.
yeah.
So, real quick, we're filming this. It's July 1st today as we're shooting this.
Yep.
So I looked back yesterday at the first 6 months of the year, my favorite movies for the first 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
And I had 3 animated movies on
Wow.
that list. Out of my top 12, I had 3 of them were animated.
I was going to ask you after we're off here, what are your favorite movies so far this year? Don't tell people yet. You tell me.
Hey.
Keep them hanging.
Tune in. All right. Before we go any further, we want to thank our sponsor, though, the Palace Theater here in Sun Prairie Marcus Theaters. Thank you for sponsoring this program and bringing a dream lounger to put under my seat when I go into the theaters. I do enjoy it. It makes even a 3-hour movie much more manageable when you've got a wonderful dream lounger to
Gives you an extra half a point for sure.
Oh, you're not kidding,
Yeah.
man. Next week, I am going to be talking about movies such as Minions, The Rise of Gru, The Princess, and a movie called Official Competition. That's all going to be happening next week. Sir, I want to thank you once again for joining me to talk about these movies.
Thanks for letting me come in.
I'm always excited when you're on the
I
schedule.
kind of begged you to do the Elvis one.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
I prefer that. And tune in to Dan, Sun Prairie News, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Is that when they can look for it?
That's
Every
when
other Wednesday?
Every other Wednesday. It'll
7
keeps
p.m.?
running, but
Yeah.
hopefully we'll
check it
get
out.
back to weekly at some point. It just gets busy.
Lives get busy. Lives get in the way. But make sure you check out the Sun Prairie News, find out everything that's going on in this community, and maybe see a guy at the end that's kind of looks like me. You never know. Let's get out of here, though. Until next week, I'm Jameson.
And I am Dan.
Thanks for watching.